is identifying protesters outside embassies and consulates, matching their profiles with electronic databases, and then abducting their brothers, sisters, parents, and other relatives in Pakistan, and then forcing the US citizens and the residents into silence.
Former Prime Minister Imran Khan remains in prolonged solitary confinement in violation of international law. His wife, Bushra Bibi, is subjected to the same treatment.
I faced assassination attempts in Pakistan in a helicopter when I was accompanying former Prime Minister Imran Khan on a humanitarian trip to Dera Ismail Khan.
These actions set a dangerous precedent for foreign interference on American soil.
But after 2023, what we have seen under the leadership of Asim Munir, Pakistan has adopted a very calculated and very refined strategy of TNR.
Immediately after the report, Pakistan Army, along with other law enforcement agencies, raided my house, my family house in Islamabad, in which my mother, my sister, and two brothers were living, and they kidnapped my two brothers.
I believe this case is politically motivated and designed to silence critics and isolate dissidents, including United States citizens living in the United States.
The current regime of Field Marshal Asim Munir is the most ruthless, callous, and repressive. Independent journalists and critics have been killed, arrested, tortured, and harassed.
Pakistan's most recent general elections were not fair, nor were they transparent, and yet the White House has chosen to cozy up to Pakistan's dictator-in-chief Asim Munir.
The time is right for sanctions. We do not need Pakistan for any grand strategic gain. I'm not talking for broad sanctions. I'm talking for very specific sanctions on individuals in uniform, in the intelligence, and also collaborating civilians.
These restrictions on freedom of expression are all the more concerning amid a concerted and sustained attack on the independence of the judiciary, the right to free trial, and rule of law in Pakistan.
We welcome members of the Senate offices, community members, and our esteemed panelists. I am Dr. Saira Bilal, and I am a board member of First Pakistan Global. This is a grassroots advocacy, pro-democracy organization. And in the last few years, we've been working very closely with the Congressional and Senate offices to work on different aspects of things that are happening in Pakistan. We have worked on transnational repression. We have worked on political oppression, abductions, and political oppression in Pakistan. First Pakistan Global was basically founded as an advocacy organization for democracy, civil liberties, for free media, and judicial independence. A core focus of our conversations today is the work on transnational repression. Pakistani descent journalists, activists, and US citizens are being harassed, threatened, and punished not only inside Pakistan, but throughout the globe, including United States. And it is very important to note that any threat or transnational oppression is a direct threat and a challenge to rule of law and democracy in America. At this point, we also need to know that there have been ongoing political repression in Pakistan. Very importantly, we cannot forget that for the last 2.5 years, former Prime Minister Imran Khan has been illegally incarcerated, and he's been kept in almost like a death cell. He does not have access to his lawyers, routine access to his family members, and to his physicians. And the United Nations Working Group of arbitrary detention has formally declared Mr. Khan's incarceration illegal and politically motivated. And this is the finding that reflects on a much wider pattern. We would love and respectfully request the Senate offices to raise awareness on transnational repression and take these cases to relevant Senate committees. We would also like you to engage the FBI and Department of State and support HR 5271 and call for a Senate hearing on Pakistan's human rights crisis, political victimization, and political prisoners. With this, I would like to invite Dr. Moeed Pirzada, who is our moderator for the session today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saira, for giving a broad overview. I'm painfully aware of the fact that we have a very short time schedule, so I'll be very quick. I have prepared a written statement as well. But just let me say a few words. The purpose of this meeting here today is to create an awareness in the Senate. We have already been interacting with the House, So we wanted to create an awareness in the Senate on the subject of transnational repression. So I welcome all the congressional staffers and the community members who are here. My name is Moeed Pirzada. I'm a known television anchor person, journalist, editor, and publisher of Pakistani descent. I'm also a British citizen and a lawful resident in the United States. I have recently been declared a digital terrorist by a military-controlled court in Pakistan, awarded double life sentence, along with other journalists, totaling more than 80 years. And we have obtained some of the testimonies. Dr. Salman Ahmed is here. So we will run some of the testimonies, but we will put the complete testimonies online because we have more material than we can show here. So this has been done by declaring me an absconder, by first registering a case while I actually lived in the United States, and then conducting a sham trial in absentia, which was against Pakistan's constitution and Pakistan's international commitments under the UN governance. Today in the Senate room, I have two responsibilities. One is to anchor this discussion with the panelists, I'm very grateful to them, and witnesses, and before that, to introduce the growing menace of transnational repression in the US. Transnational repression, when foreign regimes try silencing dissenting voices emanating from the United States soil, undermines US Constitution, and lets authoritarian regimes control the loyalties of US citizens and residents through the tool of fear. So far, we have not documented any physical attacks on the US soil, the kind increasingly witnessed in Canada and the United Kingdom. But the risk is growing as regimes like Pakistan get emboldened because of close ties with Washington. As you've seen that the President of the United States has been referring to the Pakistani Army Chief as my dear favorite Field Marshal. So far, the predominant method is identifying protesters outside embassies and consulates, matching their profiles with electronic databases, and then abducting their brothers, sisters, parents, and other relatives in Pakistan, and then forcing the US citizens and the residents into silence. You will hear more about that. Multiple court cases are registered to pressurize US corporations like Google, X, formerly Twitter, Facebook, to silence the dissenting voices, to shut down the channels, to create travel restrictions. And now recently, the new thinking is to create threats of extradition from the US soil. Goal remains simple: silence the dissenting voices. As you hear these witnesses and panelists, you need to keep in mind why it is happening and why this is bound to grow unless tackled. Transnational repression, as being documented by Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, within the United States, is a new phenomenon. It is a byproduct of technology. Out of the 180 plus members of the United Nations, most are not genuine democracies. Many, like Pakistan, are authoritarian regimes with non-representative, unstable, repressive political systems, weak, dysfunctional judiciary controlled by the executive. In case of Pakistan, this executive is essentially military. Unstable political systems with weak judiciaries give rise to fascism and widespread public unrest, to which diaspora communities within the United States react and respond. 20 years ago, this was not a problem for the authoritarian regimes like Pakistan. But now, with the growth of global technology platforms like X, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, criticism emanating from the soil of the United States reaches back home, bothers the regimes that have silenced all dissent at home. Previously, when transnational repression bill was introduced in the Senate, it was supposed to counter repressive regimes like China, Iran, North Korea, or Syria. But unfortunately, friendly allied nations like India and Pakistan have jumped into the fray. Unless checked by the Congress, Justice Department, and the Department of State, this menace will only grow, as United States is home to diasporas from all around the world. This is the essential overview I wanted to give. I'll request Mizan, let's play the first testimony from Ahmed Noorani, the journalist whose brothers were picked up. So we'll hear quickly just 2 or 3 minutes of that.
Good evening, Chair and distinguished senators. My name is Ahmed Noorani and I'm a Pakistani journalist. I am part of Pakistani American community and living in state of Virginia in DMV area, While in Pakistan, I reported about bad governance, corruption, and human rights violations, and I was based in Pakistan's capital, Islamabad. During my career, I reported about the human rights abuses by Pakistan's powerful military and its elite intelligence agency, Inter-Services Intelligence, ISI. Because of my work, I was repeatedly attacked by the ISI and its religious fanatic groups, and my family was made target at multiple times. In an October 2017 attack, I was almost killed, an incident that was reported by New York Times and Washington Post back then. After coming in United States in 2020, I started my own digital media platform with the name Fact Focus. Fact Focus has extensively reported about the corruption of the military, journals, politicians, and also reported about the misuse of blasphemy laws in Pakistan, because of which around 800 youngsters are in jails. On March 17, 2025, almost 1 year back, I reported about corruption and wrongdoings of General Asim Munir, the Chief of Army Staff of Pakistani military, currently called Field Marshal Asim Munir by President Trump. The report was based on official data and was reporting how his close relatives are running the show. Immediately after the report, Pakistan Army, along with other law enforcement agencies, raided my house, my family house in Islamabad, in which my mother, my sister, and 2 brothers were living, and they kidnapped my 2 brothers.
Good afternoon, everyone. So first of all, thank you to Pakistan First Global for convening this urgent hearing. And I'm especially grateful to see the members of the Pakistani American diaspora here, because your presence matters so much in this time. Our family and friends back home have been muzzled into silence, and simply showing up today is an act of resistance. My name is Maria Kari, and through my legal nonprofit, Project Daha, I represent political prisoners, journalists, and activists who've been targeted by state power. And today I'm going to talk to you about some of the clients and folks I'm currently advocating for. But I want to give you a quick snapshot of Pakistani Americans, just to put into perspective of why this should matter to your offices. According to the Pew Research Center, there's over 600,000 of us in the United States, and we make up 3% of the Asian population. Our median income household is in the 6 figures, and our median age is in the mid-30s. So that means that we are your donor base, and that we are politically engaged more so now than ever, and that matters for your offices. So you're hearing the word transnational repression a lot today. I'm going to call it TNR in the interest of time, and it's essentially when a foreign government reaches across its borders to silence nationals it perceives to be dissenters. The threat has largely involved the targeting of journalists, activists, and political opponents. It can take a lot of different forms, from digital surveillance to outright assassinations. And there's also an element of collective punishment, TNR. We have family members back home, all of us, who are routinely subjected to arbitrary detention, to torture, to threats. TNR is not a new phenomenon, and it's not limited to Pakistan. Organizations like the Freedom House have been tracking cases for decades, and one thing they've found is that Muslims from origin countries such as Egypt, Iran, Turkey, Tajikistan, and China have historically bore the brunt of TNR, and now I add Pakistan to that list. Before 2023, there were isolated instances of Pakistani government targeting dissenters abroad, but after 2023, what we have seen under the leadership of Asim Munir, Pakistan has adopted a very calculated and very refined strategy of TNR. And Dr. Fair and Dr. Pirzada are better suited to tell you about the historical and political context in which we're operating in, but what I can share is the stories of my clients and some of the very egregious ways they're being targeted. Some of my clients are ex-political advisors from the United States, and they've now watched in horror as their loved ones back home are being abducted and tortured. You just heard from Salman Ahmed, Dr. Salman Ahmed. Some of my clients are American journalists who also are reporting from the United States using US-based social media platforms to share with millions of followers around the world the truth of what is happening, and for that, they have been convicted in absentia, multiple life sentences. So the blowback from the regime change that happened in 2023 is being felt acutely today. Every major civil society and human rights organization and the US government have concluded that Pakistan's most recent general elections were not fair, nor were they transparent, and yet the White House has chosen to cozy up to Pakistan's dictator-in-chief Asim Munir. Munir and his cronies are this administration's new lapdog for various reasons. We have mineral reserves, we have historically strategically important borders. But the concern I have here is that the White House embracing this rogue military and political apparatus means that now nowhere is safe for the for the Pakistanis living in the United States. So I had a chance to speak to some of you before that we started, and I was telling you how the UK is particularly instructive of the tea leaves of what I fear we will see in the United States very soon. On January 26, a UK court heard credible evidence that a 25-year-old British man had been hired as a hitman, and he had succeeded in violently attacking human rights attorney Mirza Shahzad Akbar. In court proceedings, it was also unveiled that this hitman had plans to violently attack and possibly commit arson against Adil Raja, another journalist. And what the court heard in the UK is particularly instructive for those of us who understand the modus operandi of how the Pakistani exports transnational repression. These hitmen, they are hired and then they show up as IT workers dressed up with a group of goons that they bring with them. They ring the doorbell, they confirm the victim's identity, and then they proceed to pummel them either to death, or in one instance, they threw acid on the face of Shahzad Akbar. His 4-year-old was standing right behind him. And that really is the MO, right? And it's terrifying because the Pakistani embassies and the consulates are helping facilitate this violence. So what they've done in the United Kingdom is they've found compelling evidence that consulate staff were taking photos of British Pakistani dissenters for internal circulation. The UK hitman hire was stopped before somebody was killed, but hitmen have been successful elsewhere. Shortly after Prime Minister Khan was jailed, a journalist by the name of Arshad Sharif immediately fled the country, like a lot of other Pakistani journalists. First, he went to the UAE, but the UAE government shamefully cooperated with the Pakistanis and didn't provide him with reprieve. So he fled to Kenya, where he was gunned down. And this case has since been widely accepted to be a case of TNR, ordered by the Pakistani military and intelligence services. Pakistani Americans are now feeling the tentacles of the Pakistani establishment tightening. And this is a reminder for all of us in this moment. In the United States, regardless of your immigration status, we all have the right to free speech, assembly, and association. And yet, just this month, as you've all have heard, a Pakistani anti-terrorism court convicted and sentenced my client, who are lawful residents of the United States, to double life sentences for the alleged crime of digital terrorism. These journalists were living, they were reporting from the United States. None of them were formally notified of the charges against them. They weren't allowed attorneys of their choice. They were tried in absentia. And there is zero question here, zero, that the actions of these journalists is fully protected by the First Amendment. So the reason we're convening this gathering is because we simply cannot stand idly by when Americans are being tried in absentia in kangaroo courts in a foreign country. So the truth is, Pakistan's repression has gone more global than ever, and the perpetrators of this violence, I want to give a word on how they live. The military and intelligence officers, the political elite, they're living in shameless luxury. It's no secret that they enjoy unfettered travel to the US, while the average Pakistani is not going to get a visa right now to come to America for a visit or to study. These elites can buy their way into anything, including this country. It's well known that they keep their funds in American banks. They own property here in the United States, and they send their children to elite US schools. Meanwhile, the people I work with have had the entirety of their lives upturned because of the bullseye that the government has put on their back. So what are we doing about this as lawyers? TNR is uniquely hard to prove, not for two reasons. Victims are terrified and don't want to cooperate always by going public, like some of the brave individuals in this room have chosen to do so, but also because there's very little incentive for them to come forward, because justice delayed is justice denied, and in some situations, justice is simply not available. The Supreme Court has limited the extraterritorial reach of human rights laws, so that means U.S. courts are really no longer as willing as they once were on giving damages or providing any kind of relief to victims of transnational repression. And bringing a case against a foreign government is also very hard because of sovereign immunity, which is a legal principle that says foreign governments are generally immune from lawsuits. And also, we lack a standalone codified US criminal law definition or even a civil cause of action that's specific to TNR. So attorneys have to use other statutes such as the Alien Tort Statute or terrorism laws. Again, very hard to win cases under those. Where we do see success is in criminal prosecutions that are brought by the DOJ. So as an example, in March of last year, you had 2 men convicted for planning the assassination of an Iranian-American activist, Masih Alinejad, and the DOJ was bold in labeling the case as TNR. But again, to be able to succeed in such a case, not only do you have to identify the offenders, you have to be able to trace it back to the offending government. And that's, again, hard to do, especially when the political will might be lacking, such as here, where we have the White House very much cozied up with this Pakistani administration. The FBI has been helpful. The FBI monitors and takes very seriously TNR. They have repeatedly told us this in the last 2 years, and we are working closely with FBI field offices around the country, as well as dutifully updating our Congress members. And of course, there's fantastic, powerful statements from congressional leaders. But right now, what we need is more than rhetoric. Because again, Americans are being tried in kangaroo courts. They're having their homes burned down. This happened in Virginia recently. They're having their loved ones back home disappeared. So the noose is only tightening. And now that President Trump has declared Asim Munir his favorite field marshal, we really only have the doors of Congress members to knock on. And foreign governments know, including Pakistan, they know that the administration is not going to step up, and our courts are limited in the reach of the law. And they're exploiting this legal vacuum, right? And this is precisely why we need more comprehensive legislation. One point I want to make here is Pakistani establishment is deeply insecure. They're frankly terrified of being called out on social media. And I don't know if it's because I'm an aging millennial, but I don't appreciate why they're so deeply sensitive to being maligned online. But they care about that a lot. And that is one area of Pakistan's transnational repression to watch particularly closely. What we're seeing is Pakistan is following the playbook that the Indian and Turkish governments have utilized a lot in the last few years. And they keep issuing these takedown requests for entire channels and content to YouTube and X and Google. And again, the law is not helpful on this front because First Amendment protections don't apply to private entities the same way that they do to government entities. So if YouTube or Google or X gets a so-called court order from Pakistan, they're going to act on it and they will shut down the channel. YouTube and X and these social media platforms have become the lifeline for not just the Pakistani diaspora, but for Pakistanis back home who no longer have functioning courts or media infrastructure. So we recently came to learn that the Pakistani government has been spending millions of dollars on DC lobbyists because their popularity is, in the 11th circle of Dante's hell, and they need to control the narrative. But we're in a room right now with some of Pakistan's bravest truth tellers, and they're showing the world what the government is doing to its people. And Congress really has a role to play here in making sure that the likes of YouTube and X and Google don't immediately rush to deplatform a journalist or an activist with significant followings just because they got this sham court order from Pakistan, from a Pakistani court that's completely compromised. Just to end here, as an American, this matters to us deeply. The ability to report on what is happening, the ability to protest and to speak freely without fear, or for the fear of being shot in the face, as happened to Renee Good and Alex Preddy, all of that goes to the heart of our core constitutional protections, to the heart of our democracy. This is what our country was built on. And there's a reason that the First Amendment comes first. So I really implore representatives from congressional offices and the diaspora who's in touch with their offices to not allow the Pakistani government to silence my clients. These are brave individuals who are living and working in the United States. They're paying taxes here in the United States. And it's an incredible affront and a dangerous assault on America's freedoms and our freedom of press, as well as the American people's right to know. We simply can't allow foreign government to intimidate and bully Americans into silence. And this is really where I believe strong and principled American leadership can shine. And I'm happy to hang out after and talk a little bit more about this. Thank you so much.
The time is right for sanctions. We do not need Pakistan for any grand strategic game. I'm not talking for broad sanctions. I'm talking for very specific sanctions on individuals in uniform, in the intelligence, and also collaborating civilians.
These restrictions on freedom of expression are all the more concerning amid a concerted and sustained attack on the independence of the judiciary, the right to free trial, and rule of law in Pakistan.
Members of the Senate, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Syed Akbar Hussain. I'm a United States citizen based in Ashburn, Virginia. I'm also a social media commentator, and I previously served as a lieutenant colonel in the Pakistan Army. For years, I have spoken publicly about human rights abuses, corruption, and the suppression of dissent in Pakistan. I'm here today because in response to that speech, I've been targeted and harassed here in the United States and virtually from abroad by individuals I believe are linked to the Pakistan's military-backed authorities. Let me be clear. This is not simply online criticism or political disagreement. In my experience, it reflects transnational repression, a pattern of intimidation meant to silence, deter, and isolate critics, even when they are United States citizens living on the American soil. The targeting against me has included threats and harassment, but it has also involved the use of legal and quasi-legal processes inside Pakistan, weaponized in a way that reaches across borders. Around March 10th, 2024, I received a threatening letter from a foreign embassy, of course, Pakistan Embassy in Washington, D.C. That letter referenced a first information report number 3054/23 of August 15th, 2023 from Police Station South Cantonment, Lahore. It stated that a military court was using a civilian FIR to summon me in Chunia Cantonment on March 23rd, 2024, which is supposed to be a public holiday. It did not provide any meaningful detail about the court, the procedure, or how I could defend myself while being a US citizen living in the United States. Then in July of 2024, Pakistan's military spokesperson, the DGI SPR, publicly stated that I had been sentenced to a 14 years imprisonment by a closed-door military court, along with additional penalties.
Thank you, Dr. Pirzada. Thank you to First Pakistan Global for organizing this important event today. I am here on behalf of Amnesty International USA, and I'll use my time to speak more broadly about the attacks on freedom of expression and rule of law in Pakistan, and how that ties into the broader discussion around transnational repression. First, we continue to witness a crackdown on those living abroad who have criticized Pakistan's government online, as we've heard about. Here in the United States, journalists Dr. Pirzada, Wajahat Saeed Khan, and civil society director Melika Samdani have each faced charges, life sentences in the former two cases, or investigations based on their online activity. We heard earlier from Ahmed Noorani's family, from Ahmed Noorani, whose family in Pakistan has faced harassment and enforced disappearances, and his investigative website and YouTube channel have been blocked, along with those of others who have criticized the government. We have seen a crackdown on regional activist groups, such as the Baloch Yakjati Committee, the BYC, which has mobilized thousands to peacefully demand justice, accountability, and an end to enforced disappearances. Yet the BYC's members who have peacefully protested have been arrested, while mobile and internet services are routinely suspended and media coverage of the protests is severely limited. Afghan refugees face arbitrary detention and an utter lack of transparency, due process, or accountability in regard to their unlawful arrests, detentions, and deportations in violation of the principle of non-refoulement. Lawyers and human rights defenders Iman Mazari Hazir and Hadi Ali Chata were charged under the Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act, or PICA, in a bogus case relating to purported anti-state tweets. Last week, they were arrested using undue force, and the next day, they were sentenced to a total of 17 years in prison. To the congressional staff in the room, thank you so much for coming here today. And please ask your bosses to speak out and tell the government of Pakistan that criticizing government policy on X should not result in prison terms. Authorities have used laws and digital technology to restrict freedom of expression more broadly. Last year, Amnesty International uncovered Pakistan's mass surveillance and censorship machine, powered by a nexus of companies based in Germany, France, the UAE, China, Canada, and the United States. Amnesty International believes that the technology provided by a Chinese state-owned subsidiary is a commercialized version of China's quote-unquote Great Firewall, a comprehensive state censorship tool developed and deployed in China and now outside China as well. Meanwhile, Pakistan's domestic legal system offers no real protection against mass surveillance. Domestic laws lack safeguards, and those that exist, such as warrant requirements under the Fair Trial Act, are often ignored, while authorities acquire ever more sophisticated surveillance and censorship tools from foreign companies. Last year, the National Assembly passed the Prevention of Electronic Crimes Amendment 2025 Act, further restricting online expression in the country. And more recently, last August, the Anti-Terrorism Act was amended to expand the administrative detention powers of the government, further threatening the right to liberty and fair trial. Those here today are welcome to take a copy of Amnesty International's report on censorship and mass surveillance in Pakistan, and anybody watching online can find it online on our website. These restrictions on freedom of expression are all the more concerning amid a concerted and sustained attack on the independence of the judiciary, the right to free trial, and rule of law in Pakistan. In particular, the 27th Amendment to Pakistan's constitution poses a grave threat to the independence of the judiciary and the rule of law. The amendment creates a federal constitutional court that lacks independence and erodes judges' security of tenure. The amendment also grants absolute lifetime immunity to the president and heads of the military, paving the way for unchecked and arbitrary use of power and disregard for the rule of law. The amendment was passed in haste, without consultation with civil society, and amid reports of threats and intimidation against judges deciding key cases involving the ruling coalition and military. For years, Pakistan's government has used military courts to silence critics. Idris Khattak was detained in 2019 and forcibly disappeared for months before reappearing when it became clear he had been tried in secret military courts with limited access to counsel. Khattak was a human rights defender and a former Amnesty International consultant. His trial by military court demonstrates the unfairness and arbitrariness inherent in the use of military courts to try civilians. He is now 62 and suffering from diabetes without meaningful access to health care. We need his voice now more than ever, and we are calling for his immediate release. In the years since he was first detained, military trials have become common. 85 people who participated in the protests following the May 9th, 2023 arrest of former Prime Minister Imran Khan were sentenced in December 2024 by military courts. Congress should work with the Trump administration to raise these issues with the government of Pakistan and urge the following. First, an end to the practice of unlawful arrest, arbitrary detention, and enforced disappearance in Pakistan, and an end to all threats to human rights defenders living abroad. Second, amendment of the laws restricting the right to freedom of expression, including PICA, to bring these laws in line with international human rights law. Third, an end to the use of social media bans and ensuring of uninterrupted access to digital platforms and internet services. And fourth, amendment of all laws and reversal of policies that attack the independence of the judiciary, the right to free trial, and the rule of law. Additionally, Congress and the Trump administration should fulfill the United States' obligation to regulate, control, and provide transparency on exports of surveillance technologies that have been detrimental to human rights. Thank you for your concern on these critical human rights issues and for the opportunity to contribute to today's important conversation.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mehlaka Samdani. I am with the Community Alliance for Peace and Justice, an advocacy group based in Massachusetts that seeks to improve U.S. policy towards Pakistan and Palestine. I am deeply grateful to First Pakistan Global for organizing this briefing today and inviting me to share my experience with transnational repression, which, according to Freedom House, is when foreign governments reach across national borders to target exile communities and their diaspora communities to silence dissent and criticism. So approximately 4 months ago, I received a legal notice from Pakistan's National Cybercrimes Investigations Agency. This letter was sent to my ancestral home in Pakistan, and it demanded that I appear in person in front of the investigators of the agency. And if I did not comply, it would result in a seizure of tangible and intangible property, identity, and accounts. As a result of this notice, I have been advised by my legal counsel and law enforcement agencies to not travel to Pakistan for the foreseeable future. As a U.S. citizen exercising my First Amendment rights, this was a chilling reminder of how far the Pakistani regime is willing to go to silence dissent and criticism. My experience is far from isolated, and it's certainly not as harrowing as what other people have endured. Today, you will hear from other journalists and activists who've spoken out against the regime's human rights violations, and as a result, their family members back home in Pakistan have been threatened and abducted. Some have had multiple life sentences against them, and others have had their property seized. These actions set a dangerous precedent for foreign interference on American soil.
Professor Christine Fair from the Georgetown University. Her subject is national security and focus in South Asia, and I hope she'll be able to tell us what is the nature of the authoritarianism within Pakistan that is giving rise to this transnational repression in the United States.
So I'm actually going to provide a historical overview. The Pakistan Army is not new. The Pakistan Army has been a predatory parasite upon Pakistani's body politic going back to the 1950s. And unfortunately, it is a sad fact to say that all of the military regimes have benefited handsomely from U.S. assistance. So, for example, in 1958, Ayub Khan becomes Pakistan's first military dictator. He benefits handsomely from the U.S. Mutual Defense Pact with Pakistan of 1954, as well as Pakistan's membership in the treaty organizations CETO and CENTO. During this period, Pakistan began waging a brutal regime against its own citizens in East Pakistan, who were actually a majority. And this was subsidized by the U.S. taxpayer. Yahya Khan, which is Pakistan's second military dictator, he comes to power in 1969. Under his tenure, Pakistan launches a brutal genocide in East Pakistan, where the victim count ranges from 300,000 to 3 million. And even though the United States had sanctioned Pakistan in 1965, along with India, for the 65 Indo-Pakistan War, Nixon found a way of continuing to arm Pakistan despite this U.S. ban on this military assistance. And he did it because Yahya Khan was facilitating Nixon's overtures to China. We have the third dictator, Zia al-Haq. He is brutally known for his Islamization of Pakistan and just absolutely god-awful repression. Once again, he benefits because of Pakistan's utility strategically following the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979. After the Soviets withdraw, Pakistan goes under sanctions which were originally applied but then abated from 1979 for nuclear proliferation. And it's on its own for a few years. And then 9/11 comes around. And 9/11 bails out Pakistan's next dictator, General Pervez Musharraf. Under Pervez Musharraf, we could say TNR begins in earnest. Under General Pervez Musharraf, the abductions and disappearances of Baloch activists and other opponents of his regime begin in earnest. And this is again happening with the subsidy of the United States. We are in a different period. Pakistan right now does not offer the same strategic utility to the United States that it had during Pakistan's other regimes of military dictatorship. President Trump, and I say this as a very vocal foe of this president, was right to cut Pakistan's military assistance off during his first term. I want to make a clarion call, basically seconding everything that's been said here, that the time is right for sanctions. We do not need Pakistan for any grand strategic game. I'm not talking for broad sanctions. I'm talking for very specific sanctions on individuals in uniform, in the intelligence, and also collaborating civilians. I am calling for all of the things that have already been mentioned here. It is very unfortunate that President Trump has been besotted with this regime. I can't account for that. But I do hope that Congress steps up, plays its game as the independent part of this government that it's supposed to be, and takes a very different tack on Pakistan than what we're seeing in the White House. Thank you.
Former Prime Minister Imran Khan remains in prolonged solitary confinement in violation of international law. His wife, Bushra Bibi, is subjected to the same treatment.
I faced assassination attempts in Pakistan in a helicopter when I was accompanying former Prime Minister Imran Khan on a humanitarian trip to Dera Ismail Khan. And everyone. So all of the gentlemen that you've heard thus far, journalists, activists, add me as an artist. I'm responsible, people who know me, for creating two alternative national anthems, rock anthems, pop anthems, the equivalent of Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA. And over the last 30 plus years, these songs echo, reverberate all across cricket stadiums, online, everywhere, except after 2023, I'm persona non grata. I faced assassination attempts in Pakistan in a helicopter when I was accompanying former Prime Minister Imran Khan on a humanitarian trip to Dera Ismail Khan. Both the engines of that helicopter were failing, and the pilot told us that someone at the airport, which was an army base, put sediment in the fuel. Since then, my mother, who's 83 years old, my father, 88 years old, in Pakistan, have been intimidated, harassed, tortured, and been told to tell your son to shut up or we will kill you, and we will kill all. So my younger sister, Sanya, and my brother-in-law, Shahid, who are American citizens, all of my family are American citizens who live in Pakistan. Their home was violated by 15 armed men, masked, which without any warrant, without any identification. My sister, who has SLE, it's an autoimmune disease, was dragged. Her furniture was broken, the doors were broken down. And my brother-in-law, who can't breathe well, was abducted with a black mask on his head, taken away for 5 days. And this was 2023, May. This is when I decided that I'm no longer a guitar player. I have to become a warrior. Much like, Moeed and Shaheen Sabai Saab and the other friends who you've heard. So I have become an activist for transnational repression. And I'll just quickly tell you what's happened. On December 3rd, 2025, nearly 50 members of Congress sent a bipartisan letter to Secretary Marco Rubio, warning of a worsening campaign of transnational repression by Pakistan's military and intelligence apparatus. That letter did something extraordinary. It named names, included mine. It described how my brother-in-law was abducted, held without charge. After I spoke publicly here to law enforcement in the United States about the human rights abuses under General Asim Munir, my family, who are all US citizens, did get some relief in Pakistan. So the pressure from the US government means a lot. This is not just like, I drove 5 hours not to just make this short 2-minute statement. Government agencies, all of them I spoke with, and they were very helpful, and they're taking this very seriously because this is not just a Pakistani problem. Since my first testimony last year, my social media accounts have been algorithmically throttled by Asim Munir's government. Anonymous messages warn me to stop or suffer consequences. But like I said, this is not just about Pakistan. From Beijing to Tehran, Riyadh to New Delhi, authoritarian powers are testing whether American soil can remain a safe space for free thought. They are probing US weakness, exploiting legal gaps, and using disinformation, infiltration, and coercion to undermine our institutions. Now, what can be done? Just these 4 points, and then I'll stop. If America fails to respond decisively, authoritarian regimes everywhere will learn that American freedoms are negotiable. That is why I urge this Senate to draw a clear, unambiguous line. Number one, protect US citizens. Transnational repression must be treated as a national security offense, not a consular nuisance. I was helped by all the law enforcement agencies, and the FBI and DOJ should pursue these cases with the same resolve used against foreign interference. Number two, sanction the perpetrators. Utilize global Magnitsky and the Democracy Act tools against Pakistani officials and intelligence operatives who direct or enable these campaigns. This includes travel bans, asset freezes, and accountability where evidence warrants. Number three, defend the digital commons. Tech companies must disclose and resist back-channel censorship, requests from authoritarian states that threaten constitutionally protected speech in the United States. And number four, tie aid to reform. No US assistance should enable a regime, Asim Munir's regime, that jails opposition leaders, abducts families, or intimidates Americans abroad. The test of partnership must be the defense, not the destruction of democracy. Senators, when we speak of transnational repression, we are not only defending Pakistani Americans, we are defending the American promise that freedom of conscience, speech, and artistic expression do not end at a dictator's whim. Finally, I stand before you not in fear, but in fidelity to the music of freedom, to America's ideals, and to every voice that refuses to bow before repression. Thank you.
Honorable members of the United States Senate, my name is Dr. Shahbaz Gill. I'm a Pakistani citizen and a lawful US resident, a former professor of leadership and management at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and a former spokesperson and chief of staff to Pakistan's former Prime Minister, Mr. Imran Ahmad Khan Niazi. I appear before you as a direct victim and eyewitness of state repression carried out by Pakistan's military establishment in August 2022. After a televised interview in which I stated that all state officials must obey Pakistan's constitution and refuse unlawful orders, I was abducted, tortured, and charged with sedition by Pakistani intelligence agencies. That same program featured the prominent journalist Arshad Sharif. On the day I was abducted, he fled Pakistan. He was later assassinated in Kenya. His mother formally petitioned Pakistan's Supreme Court, naming former Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa, former ISI Chief Nadeem Anjum, and other senior military officials as responsible. I was subsequently booked in dozens of fabricated cases, placed on Pakistan's no-fly list, and silenced through fear. I was only able to leave Pakistan in April 2023 through an order of the Lahore High Court's larger bench. After arriving in the United States, I continued peaceful political advocacy through political journalism, social media, and public rallies. In retaliation, in June 2024, my brother was abducted and kept in illegal detention for months by military intelligence to force my silence. Family members and associates faced bank account freezes, phone disconnections, and travel bans, a clear pattern of transnational repression. Several prominent Pakistani journalists have suffered similar persecution. Many now live in exile abroad and continue to be harassed and chased by the Pakistani regime.
Good morning, senators and all others. My name is Shaheen Sabai, and I'm a U.S. citizen living in the U.S. for 31 years. I'm a veteran journalist from Pakistan where I held top positions as group editor of the largest newspaper chain and head of the largest TV channel. I resigned in 2016 2016 and returned to the US. Currently, I'm active on the social media as an analyst and commentator with 1.8 million followers on Twitter and thousands on the Facebook. I have always fought for democracy and human rights in my 55 years career, and I've faced and fought many military regimes. I survived all of them, sometimes by resigning my job and at others when the regime fell. My resignation in 2003 became so high profile, the CNN International did a full 30-minute show to highlight it. But the current regime of Field Marshal Asim Munir is the most ruthless, callous, and repressive. Independent journalists and critics have been killed, arrested, tortured, and harassed regularly without impunity. With impunity, I think. Since I am a vocal critic, I have been implicated in numerous false cases, declared as an absconder, and fugitive by subservient Pakistani courts, and last month, me and 5 other dissidents were sentenced to 2 life terms in prison in absentia because someone heard us on YouTube and attacked our military installations. We were not given a chance or a notice to defend ourselves, and a lawyer was asked to defend us. We don't know who he was, without any information or notice. It was a sheer bogus kangaroo court trial. The court sentenced us to 2 life imprisonments. All this falls in the broad category of transnational repression, and while I or any of my family members cannot travel to Pakistan fearing the state repression, I am not feeling safe in the US as well. Why I say so is that 3 colleagues have been attacked recently, 2 in the UK and 1 in Washington, D.C. 9 persons, all hired guns, were arrested in UK and in DC investigations. In DC, investigations must be going on when a house of our colleague was put on fire. I urge the Senate to make stringent laws to stop this growing threat to US citizens and fighters for freedoms and human rights.
So our time is almost over. I thanked all the people. If there's any questions, I don't know whether we can take the questions or we have to leave the room. Someone can actually tell me about it.
Where they're incredibly sensitive. The military cartel in Pakistan, incredibly sensitive to criticism from the United States, whether it's on X or other platforms or in the news. And so my question is to both of you, Professor Fair and Maria, that how do you think that average American citizens can raise flags and get their voice heard in the newspapers, or get them to you so you would amplify them?
Okay, yeah. Dr. Fair.
I'll be really blunt with you. I don't think your average American knows where Pakistan is on a map. So I think that's a really big ask for your average Pakistani American who is dealing with so many domestic issues right now. So I don't think that's the way to go. That's just not going to happen. I mean, to be completely blunt.
Any other question before we wind it up for the day?
Point that currently US doesn't need Pakistan for any specific reasons, right? So of course we're very passionate about what happened to Imran Khan, but what was Biden's need? Was it just the evacuation from Pakistan that US intervened and got his government toppled over?
So first of all, I'm not an Imran Khan supporter, right? I view this from a historical point of view. Under Imran Khan's government, people were also disappeared, and there was TNR during Imran Khan's period. So I'm not here to be Panglossian about Imran Khan. Pakistan's utility during the Biden administration was precisely that evacuation. Most people don't appreciate that. I mean, obviously, I would imagine people on the Hill do. that we were completely dependent upon Pakistan for the waging of the war, as well as the withdrawal through Pakistani, what's called ground lines of communication. The vast majority, the throughput went through Pakistan. The northern distribution route was virtually non-existent. So that was precisely the utility. But Biden, so I also don't buy the idea that the United States had Imran Khan toppled. That's not a conspiracy that I espouse. I don't think the Biden administration cared enough about Imran Khan to have him toppled. So that's not something I can sign on to.
That we're going to place all these testimonies online. And my understanding is this, that First Pakistan Global is also going to submit the transcripts of the presentations and also of the testimonies to all the offices that participated. And once again, I thank all the congressional staffers and aides that came from the offices of Senator Slotkin, Senator Brooker, Senator Rosen, Senator Schiff, Senator Von Helen, Durbin, and Senator Tim Kaine, and also the Congressman Suhas. You want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to actually chime in here to answer a question that Dr. Salman Ahmed had. One recommendation I have for the congressional offices here is it's impossible for the U.S. government to fight something if it's not something that we're measuring. And right now we've asked repeatedly for this to be a whole of government effort, and unfortunately it hasn't been. So my clients are frequently shuffled between the FBI, the Department of State, and then individual congressional offices. One of the things that Congress members can step up in this moment and do is require DHS, DOJ, and state to submit joint annual public reports on transnational repression across the board.
Right.
Across the United States. So that would be analogous to like existing human rights and national security reporting that you guys do. Yep. So we have trafficking in persons reports, we have country conditions reports that the State Department has to put out. That would be a really great way for I agree with Dr. Fair, the average person is, drowning in the issues that we have in this country. But for our government to take this seriously, we need a better job of accounting of who and from where is being targeted and how.
Thank you. So with this, we conclude. And I think it's a good session. We have started a journey of information on the transnational repression in the Senate building. And we look forward to stay in touch with the congressional aides and the Senate teams that participated today. And as I said, that I believe the First Pakistan Global is going to collect the transcripts and provide to your offices. Thank you so much. Is identifying protesters outside embassies and consulates, matching their profiles with electronic databases, and then abducting their brothers, sisters, parents, and other relatives in Pakistan, and then forcing the US citizens and the residents into silence.
Former Prime Minister Imran Khan remains in prolonged solitary confinement in violation of international law. His wife, Bushra Bibi, is subjected to the same treatment.
I faced assassination attempts in Pakistan in a helicopter when I was accompanying former Prime Minister Imran Khan on a humanitarian trip to Dera Ismail Khan.
These actions set a dangerous precedent for foreign interference on American soil.
But after 2023, what we have seen under the leadership of Asim Munir, Pakistan has adopted a very calculated and very refined strategy of TNR.
Immediately after the report, Pakistan Army, along with other law enforcement agencies, raided my house, my family house in Islamabad, in which my mother, my sister, and two brothers were living, and they kidnapped my two brothers.
I believe this case is politically motivated and designed to silence critics and isolate dissidents, including United States citizens living in the United States.
The current regime of Field Marshal Asim Munir is the most ruthless, callous, and repressive. Independent journalists and critics have been killed, arrested, tortured, and harassed.
Pakistan's most recent general elections were not fair, nor were they transparent, and yet the White House has chosen to cozy up to Pakistan's dictator-in-chief Asim Munir.
The time is right for sanctions. We do not need Pakistan for any grand strategic gain. I'm not talking for broad sanctions. I'm talking for very specific sanctions on individuals in uniform, in the intelligence, and also collaborating civilians.
These restrictions on freedom of expression are all the more concerning amid a concerted and sustained attack on the independence of the judiciary, the right to free trial, and rule of law in Pakistan.